India has clocked a little over 27,000 cases of COVID-19 in the last 24 hours. It's a drop of nearly 20% day on day. Every day, we're seeing the numbers reduce, and with that, restrictions are reducing as well. Today on the show, we're going to ask the question that is on everyone's mind. Has the third wave of COVID-19 ended for now across India? Can we get back to a situation where businesses resume, the economy picks up pace once again, and we come back to some semblance of normalcy? We're basing this on the fact that COVID infection numbers are down, death numbers are down, and restrictions are also easing in different places. To speak on this today, I'm joined by Dr. Shashank Joshi. He's a member of the Maharashtra COVID-19 Task Force. Subhash Goyal, President of the Confederation of Tourism Professionals of India, is joining us on the show today. I'm also speaking with Sanjay Sethi, MD and CEO of Chalet Hotels, and Kumar Rajagopalan, the CEO of the Retailers Association of India. Welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for joining us this evening on the India Development Debate. Let me get the medical assessment first from Dr. Joshi. Dr. Joshi, I know you don't like it when people say COVID is over, because we never know when it can rebound and give us another shocker. But for now, is it fair to say that the worst of the third wave has ebbed? Some of these restrictions can continue to come down. In Maharashtra, we're hearing reports that they're mulling whether we should dispense with face masks even.
No, so the last part, Tamanna, I'm not so sure. But three things are very, very clear-cut. Number one, the active infections now stand at 0.99% of total infections. National recovery rate is at 97.82% as per the Union Health Ministry data. Even a place like Delhi is now in a green zone. And the weekly test positivity rate has fallen below 5%, with the overall weekly positivity rate of 2.2%. And national daily positivity rate is 2.2%. And a weekly positivity rate for the nation is around 3.63%. So if you look at from all that, and if you yesterday saw, the Bombay Municipal Corporation announced their 9th round of genome sequencing, and 95% of their samples were Omicron. So clearly, as far as Delhi and Mumbai are concerned, the wave is on its lowest ebb. And even Mumbai, unlike the first and second wave, which had a thick tail, there is no thick tail seen in this wave. So clearly, this was a fast spreading, fast recovering virus, and the worst is over. That's very clear cut. So there is no two ways about that. But some parts of India, and it is a heterogeneously spreading virus, there is some active infection. The only worry which medical scientists and public health experts have, that these numbers, what we are seeing is after a change and a dramatic change in public health policy and testing policy. We have stopped doing asymptomatic testing, which was founding almost 80-90% of the test. And second thing is we have stopped testing also the contact tracing. So obviously there is an active virus which is asymptomatic in circulation, which can bounce back. But according to me, because of our large vaccination, as well as a large exposure of people, for the next 6 to 9 months, there is unlikely, unless there is a new variant of concern, anything new will happen. We have to live with COVID. We have to learn to live with the COVID-safe practices. We have to continue our masking for some period of time for sure. I do not agree with the European and the American counterparts. They have suffered the worst. But at the same time, our economic and educational activities and normal activities have to continue. The only problem in cities like Mumbai are, we have a high population density, crowded clusters, closed spaces, where if you follow COVID appropriate behavior, and if you are doubly vaccinated, I think we are good to resume all sorts of activities. So I don't see major challenges in that. And clearly, yes, I agree with you there, that third wave, at least in Delhi, Mumbai, and a large part of India, seems to be at its lowest step now.
Okay, so the worst may be behind us, says Dr. Joshi. We have another 6 to 9 months, at least, before we have, hopefully we don't have another variant, but you never know. So let me come to the next part of this. What impact is this really having on business resumption? And Mr. Sethi, let me get your viewpoint first, because I think it would be safe to say business travel was easily the worst hit through all of this. Even at some point, leisure travel had begun, but business travel saw a situation where companies said, let's go on to remote meetings, etc., save costs, what's the need? Are you seeing a turnaround there?
Tamanna, early days still. We saw a turnaround happen in the months of October, November, and December, but then again got clamped down in January because of the Omicron wave. We're seeing early signs, the green shoots of revival on the business travel also. But early days, as I said, I think what's the key triggers for business travel to kick off stronger is the opening of the skies for scheduled flights, number one. And number two, removing all restrictions that are there. Whilst Maharashtra has removed most of the restrictions, we still have only 25% of banquet hall capacity that can be utilized for wedding functions or other banquet functions. That seems to be really tight. I mean, 25% capacity means our banquet halls will have less density than any aircraft in the sky, any restaurant in the city, any public space that we have, and certainly less density than any political rally. I think we need to really, get rid of those restrictions now.
I think that last bit is a great irony that you've pointed out, less restrictions than any political rally. But just a follow-up question there, Mr. Sethi, you mentioned that there's some signs of green shoots that are now visible. Could you elaborate on that? What segments are beginning to travel once again for business? And are you worried about a long-term behavioral change? Like I mentioned, if a company realizes that instead of booking an executive on a flight, paying for their stay overnight or a DA, if this can be done over a Zoom call or a Teams call, then why not save that cost? Has that resulted in a shift in spending habits and behavioral change?
We didn't see that happening when the recovery was happening in the quarter of October to December. We saw a rapid pickup on business travel, and we were heading in the right direction, and we continued January and February. Would have been great months. Look, my view is the following. It's a competitive world. It's not just competitive for hospitality or travel. It's competitive for everyone. And would people take the chance of putting in 95% or 90% of their effort at securing a deal as against the competitors traveling and meeting the client and closing the deal? I think not. So I see business travel coming back very strong. And you've got to differentiate work from home from travel for work. These are two different things. People didn't travel frivolously earlier for business travel either. So there was need to travel, and that's why they did it. And therefore, we believe that business travel will be back. I think it's very important for India to capture the foreign travel market share very quickly. Otherwise, other countries will capture that. We'll be left behind for years to come if we don't move quickly.
Goyal, to comment on that, since we're focusing on what's happening with the tourism business. Mr. Goyal, are you seeing a resumption by and by of leisure travel as well? We have a long weekend coming up. Are bookings beginning to come in again? What about interest from international travelers? Has any of that happened yet?
See, first thing, there is no international travel, tourism travel taking place. From 2019, whenever the visas were closed and scheduled international flights were closed, you see, we have an air services agreement with 105 countries, and only about 60 countries are under the air bubble. And there also, like Ethiopian Airline had 36 flights a week, they operate only with, 2 or 4 flights a week. So what I don't understand is that a passenger traveling on an air bubble is safe, and a passenger traveling on a scheduled international flights can get an infection. I mean, this is very contradictory. So that is absolutely wrong. Secondly, who are the people suffering? Some of the hoteliers and domestic tourism, yes, few people have benefited, but there are a lot of people dependent on international travel, inbound international travel. About 95 million people are employed by airlines and tourism and hotels and other industry, out of which 85 are directly in the tourism industry. According to the Ministry of Tourism, 25 million people have lost their jobs. And there are a lot of people on the verge of starvation, like tourist guides, government-approved tourist guides. They don't have a single business. Tourist taxi drivers, transporters, they are starving. If the gurdwaras were not there, they would have died of hunger. And a lot of other people who are dependent on handicrafts, the artists in Rajasthan, Jaipur, Bikaner, Jaisalmer, who perform for the tourists. They are starving. And if we do not open scheduled international flights, I can guarantee you more people will die of economic starvation than will die of COVID-19.
So to come to the point, Mr. Goyal, because we know the pain of the industry. We've been covering it for 2 years. Are you seeing any change in the last 6 weeks or so since infection numbers have come down?
The only change we have seen is that the quarantine restrictions have been removed. And this is the first step towards removing starting of scheduled international flights. Yes, in the weekends, the tourist destinations do make some money on domestic tourism, but the city hotels, which are dependent on business travel, are actually bleeding. And not only that, you see, the whole idea of this COVID, I agree with that masks should be continued and social distances should be continued, but restricting the banquet halls or, is absurd.
Yeah.
Because the congestion on the flights, as rightly mentioned, is much more.
Is the same. Okay, let me just get a sense of what's happening in the retail side. Mr. Rajagopalan, what we're trying to understand here, and let me reiterate, we're well aware of the pain of some of these sectors over the last 2 years. We've spoken about it often. I'm trying to understand what is going to be the impact of the fact that infections are coming down. Are we already seeing some of that impact, and what are you expecting? Are you seeing a return of footfalls, for example?
No, I think it's a recent thing that the infections have come down. If you look at the month of January, the infections were peaking at that time.
Yes.
So we just got our January numbers from all our retailers. I mean, it is negative 9% compared to pre-pandemic level for the month of January. So it's not as if things are okay immediately. It takes some time for people to build confidence. Also, there are various restrictions. In fact, I should be commenting on the way in which Maharashtra dealt with the whole restrictions this time vis-a-vis some of the other states. Maharashtra did a fantastic job of making sure that livelihoods were taken care of to a large extent. There were some restrictions, but nowhere near the kind of restrictions that some of the other states did. For example, Delhi even now has got restrictions on timing. Haryana has got restrictions on timing, that the number of hours that stores can open. Some states did have weekend restrictions. So these were worrying, frankly, because it's different in different parts of the country. Delhi is still not lifted its restrictions, and we've been writing to the Delhi government, talking to them quite a bit. So in a lot of ways, I think Maharashtra led the way, showed that it's hospitalization that you should really consider, alert for livelihood to happen. And this has not been the same case everywhere else. Now we are seeing some restrictions getting removed in states, at least like Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, etc. However, we do know that, like all the others have said, banqueting is a big part. It's not just about banquet for hotels. It's about travel, and along with that, about the amount of money that people spend normally to buy items. I mean, when you have a marriage, there's all kinds of things that get sold. So other than food and CDIT, which is consumer durable and IT, which has been okay all the while, the garment sector, the jewelry sector, the footwear sector is all got impacted. And eating out had also got hugely impacted in some parts of the country. Maharashtra, of course, kind of bounced back quite a bit, thankfully. So we've got various restrictions that has to be removed until we know that life is normal. We did see some, I mean, I called it a period of cheer coming back when things were better in the month of October and November. We saw growth over pre-pandemic level in those 2 months for the retail sector. So we know that there's a direct correlation. The psyche of a consumer, the confidence of a consumer is very important to keep. So what do we expect from all this? I think that is what is most important now. I heard what Dr. Shashank Joshi said. I am hearing what the others are saying. I think for businesses, it's important to know what is going to be the overall strategy that every place would take across the country. It cannot be some places they're just shutting down in spite of there being not as many numbers. In fact, Mumbai had more numbers, but yet the other places shut down faster. So one has to have a more consistent policy. COVID appropriate behavior, why not? Continue for 1 year for all I know, because that could be the right way to do it. And I'm sure the doctors can tell better than anybody else. But when it comes to business, we have to support livelihood. And it is possible to take care of livelihood and also take care of COVID appropriate behavior. We have to continue.
So are you seeing a resumption of consumer confidence now in the last couple of weeks?
In the last 1 week, there is a little bit of thought process there. I will not say that it's resumption, because confidence comes when people can meet. Confidence comes when people see a whole lot of things happening. Now, because the schools have opened, there's a sense of normalcy that's come back to many parts of the country. So yeah, I mean, there is some resumption, but we'll have to see how it's going to impact business over the next 2 or 3 weeks.
So-
My only request even now is that we need to have a more similar policy and a more long-term policy. We have to live with COVID. We should have a very clear policy on that.
No, so policies are going to be restricted to what different states and different local authorities want. That's always how it has worked. It's not been a top-down approach because it depends on that particular area. But I'd like to bring in Dr. Joshi on some of the comments he's had.
I'd like to come in on this. The center was very clear, protect livelihood. Maharashtra government was very clear. They want to protect livelihood. Everybody has to come to that thought. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. No, Dr. Joshi, I want you to respond to some of the comments being made in terms of, is it time now to ease up a little more? And let me put this in the context of what some of the countries are doing around the world. You talked about Europe and America. UK, for example, they've decided that now, no matter what happens next, we are going to come back to a level of pre-pandemic normalcy, and they're banking on the fact that they have vaccinations, they have had boosters as well. Looking at our vaccination rates across adults, do you think it's time now to head in that direction and ease up a little more? Some of the restrictions are contradictory, like they have mentioned that you're restricting the number of people in a banquet hall but not necessarily in flights, in restaurants but not necessarily in political rallies.
Tamanna, 2-3 things. First thing is that we should not look at the West at all. They have not done well. For example, Denmark on the 1st of February lifted all restrictions. Their numbers skyrocketed, their deaths have skyrocketed. So I don't think we should look there. We are enough self-reliant to do our own things. I agree with some of my panel members that much more easing of restrictions need, including banqueting spaces. I think it was 50, which was very less. That went up to 200, which is also very less. And I'm reasonably certain in a week or two that also will be eased out. So I think this time, if you look at the approach Maharashtra has followed, first wave, we were very tight across India and Maharashtra. Second wave, we were also a little tight. It took a little longer time because of a thick tail. In this wave, we have been quite open and we have looked at numbers and hospitalizations, oxygen, ventilation. And clearly we saw that the living with COVID is as important, livelihoods are as important. So I'm reasonably certain that even the administration, because these decisions are administrative decisions taken by the politicians and the bureaucrats together, they will clearly, you will see much more easing, at least in states like Maharashtra and Mumbai, in the next couple of weeks. That's clearly happening and you can see that trend. And I think that's a very healthy trend. At the same time, only one caveat is, and I'm thankful that Mr. Goyal agreed, and everybody on the panel has agreed, that masking continues and we live with COVID. We have to live with COVID. I don't see any major chance, that we have to live with COVID and we have to continue doing what is correct. At the same time, I am quite confident that we need to open up all sectors which have been hit badly. We have to do this tightrope balance. And currently, because of our large exposure due to natural infection, and also because of dual vaccination completed in large parts of India, I think we have to congratulate the India vaccine story.
Yes.
They have done a fantastic job. I think we are now in a much better position to start economic and educational wheel. At the same time, we should not be foolhardy and congregate like rallies which are being alluded to. I think that's also the other extreme. We know that there is an invisible virus in circulation because we are not testing asymptomatics. So these numbers are masked numbers. But I think rather than being fearful, we just need to be more pragmatic, practical, and we need to be very, very clearly safety oriented without being any panic. And I think we have been there. So I personally feel that another 2 weeks we'll see much more easing of restrictions across India, including Maharashtra and Mumbai.
And what is the use of having so many vaccinations, more than 1.2 or 1.3 billion people vaccinated, if we don't open up? That is one. Secondly, as far as tourism is concerned, in 2019, we earned $30 billion in foreign exchange. I know our balance of payments are good because of pharmaceutical exports and all, but you see, this could add to another $50-60 billion if we open up. And we need this foreign exchange because we have two enemies Pakistan and China on our borders.
Yes.
And we need to buy latest equipment.
No, so everyone knows that, Mr. Goyal. I mean, with thank you so much for those inputs.
Let us open up.
Yeah, no, so let us open up is fine. Like Dr. Joshi is saying that in the next 2 weeks, we might see easing of more restrictions. I want an outlook from you, Mr. Sethi, because you made an interesting point earlier. You're pretty sure that business travel will come back to its pre-pandemic levels. Are you confident of that? What is the kind of trajectory you see in terms of occupancy in the next 6 to 9 months?
So look, we see traction, as I said, and I think the traction that we see is from companies or industries which are more hungry for business. As I said, it's a competitive world, and we've already seen some companies speed up the travel compared to the rest, and I think it's an outcome of how hungry they are for business. That's one. Second, on an outlook, I see business travel subject to the waves getting not coming back, sort of normalizing by mid-March. As far as domestic business travel is concerned, we'll go back to November numbers. And by September, October, subject to scheduled flights coming back, because there'll be time. Look, long-haul travel is not planned overnight. So if we get these scheduled flights back, I expect September, October, we should see international business travel come back strongly. And we don't speak enough about international business travel. It constitutes almost 40 to 45% of the travelers that come into India from out of the borders and contributes 60% of the revenue that comes in Forex. And people tend to miss that out, the importance of the business travel, because these are the guys who travel on per diems from their corporate houses, and their per diems are healthy. So the spend per day of a business traveler is far higher. Overall, I think second half of the coming financial year, which is FY 22-23, looks good to get to pre-pandemic numbers, subject to, of course, no more new COVID variants. And I think on a full year basis, 23-24 should be back to normal.
All right. Thank you so much. Let's see, 23-24 back to normal, fingers crossed. But I thought it was important to address where we are at right now in the COVID story. We have seen a drastic reduction in numbers and are moving towards normalcy. Thank you so much to all of you for joining us today.